This could end me. 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 Oh, but I'm still standing.
My name is Ashley Mielke, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Grief and Trauma Healing Center. I think suicide is different and unique from other losses because it adds another layer of emotion for a lot of survivors of suicide. I know in my experience, it wasn't just the physical loss of my dad that I grieved. It was also these really big and conflicting feelings that I had, like shame and guilt and fear of judgment and criticism from others. So when my dad died by suicide in 2010, I realized how ill-equipped I was to deal with my grief. The ironic piece is I was a second-year graduate student studying to be a psychologist, and I thought that I was surrounded by people who would know how to help me. And I realized very quickly that the professionals around me were also ill-equipped to deal with my pain. And so I ended up taking all of the advice that I was given, like to keep busy and be strong and give it time. And I ended up burying myself in school and work and essentially avoiding my emotional pain. So a couple of years pass and I was now a psychologist, and grieving people were starting to be referred to work with me. And I came alive in this work.
My experience with grief, I was pretty naive to it. And so I didn't know what normal grief looked like. And I was not improving. In fact, my grief was getting worse.
You're feeling emotions you don't want to feel. You're reliving memories that you don't want to relive. But it was really critical for me to be able to get that out and not just keep shoving and pushing it down, because in order to move on and in order to remember my mom in the ways that I wanted to, that was just absolutely critical.
I realized that what I was connecting to in others was that common thread of suffering. But the problem was I had no tools to help them. So in 2013, I signed up for a training called the Grief Recovery Method Program. And that program absolutely changed my life. It gave me permission to grieve the death of my dad and all of the emotions and shame that I felt around his suicide, and take action to emotionally complete what was unfinished in our relationship. One of the greatest tools and takeaways that I walked away with after going through the grief recovery method was this concept of emotional incompleteness. So what I was able to do and reflect on in my relationship with my dad was all of this unfinished business, including things I wish had been better, different, or more, and all of the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations in our relationship. I was 23 years old, and my dad tragically died. We had just really started our adult relationship. So when he died, I grieved all of these things, like him attending my graduation from my master's degree, him walking me down the aisle at my wedding, him becoming a grandpa to my future children. And so that was excruciating. When a loved one or a friend or someone we care about dies by suicide, we are often left with a number of unsaid things. These undelivered communications about how we feel about the individual, what we value about them, all of the thank yous, all of the things we love about them, what we valued about that relationship, all the fond memories, and all of the things we wish were better, different, or more.
The day that everything happened, the details are so perfectly ingrained in my mind that I found myself reliving that moment over and over and over again. The sounds, the sights, the smells, the memories, everything were so fresh and so vivid that if I wasn't actively engaged talking with someone or in an activity, then they just consumed me and I felt powerless. And so I later found out that I had PTSD, and I truly thought that was only for people who fought in war, and I never ever considered that was something that I was suffering from. I just thought it was grief, and I thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get over this? I questioned if my faith was strong enough.
It's important when someone's grieving a death by suicide to remember that they're not alone. Suicide is so much more common than we think, and it's actually a common thread that many of us share, but it's our fear of talking about it and bringing it up that often creates the sense of isolation that we feel.
Take the step that you need to take, even if it's scary, even if it really hurts in that moment, because it will hurt, but it will be worth it in the end, and it will help you move on and find somebody that can be your rock. They don't have to have all the answers, and they don't have to say the right things, but just have somebody just be there with you, because it makes a world of difference.
It's so important that grieving people know that even though we share a parallel loss of suicide, your experience is going to be unique and individual to you. Every relationship is unique and individual, so your experience is going to look different from the next person's. So it's so important that regardless of your emotional experience, you don't compare your grief to somebody else. That it has no reflection of the love that you felt for someone. It's often an experience that we can't anticipate or even predict.
I am someone who tries to find purpose in pain, and I was in a lot of pain, so I was trying to find a lot of purpose. And for me, that looked like being exceptionally busy, whether it was volunteering in the community or with church service, working multiple jobs, expressing myself through art, music, writing. I was just trying to be so busy that my busyness outweighed the grief. And that was kind of my coping strategy. But that can only go for so long, because that strategy is not a sustainable one.
Even when you're in a room full of people that you love, you can still feel really alone in your grief. And it can be really hard to communicate that, sometimes especially with people close to you, right? Because you're worried about them and you're worried about you, and there's just a lot that goes on. So trying different things, and if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to try something else, because as much as we like to think that we're strong enough and we can do it on our own, I think that we'll go a lot farther if we reach out and we have other people help us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jody Carrington. I am a psychologist and a mom and a wife, and I spend the majority of my career talking about connection and reconnection and how critically important it is, especially when that is disconnected.